What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the MME YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing respecting our boundaries to protect our energy. Before we get into that though, before we get into the parameters, that's not really a good joke, but I was trying to go for a joke there. Before we get into all the parameters of this video, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel if you like the content we put out there, and if you like to see more of it. With that out of the way, let's get into this. So first things first, I want to establish a few key definitions, right? So essentially, boundaries are the rules or the limits that we place for our own psychological health, meaning our mental and emotional health. Our emotions are energy in motion, right? Emotion, energy, motion, right? They're the energy through which we move throughout the world, whether it's some type of old pattern of reaction being triggered by some unmet emotional need, or it's you are in a state of decisive, inspired, you're moving from that type of energy and you're just taking decisive, inspired action towards a direction that you want to move through or move to in your life, right? No matter which end of the spectrum you're on there, it's all stemming from some type of energy or some type of emotion causing you to move in a certain way, okay? So then our boundaries essentially they put up an energetic, a psychological force field that can really protect our own energy field. Now, the key to this, and what I alluded to in the beginning, is us respecting our own boundaries, right? Humans are social creatures, right? I don't believe this is a secret. We're social creatures. Therefore, we have to, and we do coexist with an assortment of interesting characters throughout our day. So it is important for us to be able to communicate and articulate our boundaries and our needs to the people that are closest to us in our lives. Family, friends, coworkers, things of that sort, people that we collaborate and coexist with on a routine basis. And then we have to be deeply rooted and grounded in those boundaries to maintain our own sense of self, to honor who we are as a unique individual soul. Our boundaries are there to protect us, but we have to respect them. We have to be grounded in them. We have to be firmly rooted in them and to stand firm in them. Communicating and articulating them is important, yes, for the people that are closest for us in our lives. But for the people that aren't as close to you, maybe it's a coworker you coexist with every once in a blue moon, right? You might not be like right off the bat, like, hey, like, this is how I operate to respect my own emotions and stuff like that. Your actions will be a reflection of the boundaries that you have established for yourself, because the boundaries that you utilize in everyday life to protect your own energy field, to protect your emotional health, to protect your psychological, your mental health, are the same boundaries that you utilize within your own being. If you don't want to deal with a bunch of negative and toxic people, but when you're at home and you're alone, you tolerate negative and toxic behavior from yourself, meaning you have judgmental thoughts about people, you are being mean and hurtful to yourself, you're shaming yourself, that's the type of energy you're going to attract out in the world. And so then you may wonder why, Susie from work is always talking shit to you, or maybe even talking shit about you, right? You have to look inward and look at the boundaries that, of course, yes, you have for the outside world, but what are the internal boundaries that you also have for yourself? Now, there are layers to this stuff, because if you find yourself self-sabotaging, shaming yourself all the time, like, I feel for you. Everything I'm saying here is not to shame somebody, it is not to judge anybody. Like, I feel for you and I have so much love for you in my heart, because I have been there. That shit, I'm getting emotional as I say it, that shit sucks. That sucks. It's not a pleasant experience. I don't even know if you can see it, but my eyes are watering because I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I feel for you. I am not here to shame or judge anybody, but you have to look inward at the boundaries that you have within and for yourself. What types of behaviors and actions do you tolerate from yourself? Like, all of the therapies out there are amazing, and I'm so glad that they are shining a light on this deep inner work that we collectively must do to heal. And we also have to look at not just how we coexist with other people, but how we coexist within our own being. And this is where the layers come in of healing the inner child, healing these different parts of ourselves. In IFS, internal family systems, they talk about the different parts, right? There's the exiles and there's the protectors are, this is the way I like to view it, is the protectors are the psychological stories that we've created to protect the wounded inner children that we have. Those are the exiles. Those are the deep, big emotions that we weren't able to feel as children, right? And the boundaries that we place up protect those children, those inner children, from being hurt again. And I don't mean from an unconscious pattern. I mean, we heal that wounded part of ourselves. We respect and honor that part of ourselves by establishing boundaries, by not dealing with negative and toxic people. Maybe that means you being shorter in your responses to coworkers because they're very toxic and negative and they shit talk and complain all the time and you don't want to be around that. They may not like you, but if you're okay with yourself and you've established those internal boundaries where you don't shit talk other people, or better yet, when you do, if you hear a judgmental thought go by in your mind, you don't judge the thought. You don't judge the thought. Let's say you're at the gym and you hear a judgmental thought go by. In the past, maybe you would have shamed yourself because oh, I don't want to be judgmental, but there's a judgmental thought. Oh my God, I'm a piece of shit. And it's it's just a thought. You start to learn to let it go by because you've established the boundaries that even if a judgmental thought goes by, even if you have judgmental thoughts, I won't shame myself. That's just a exiled, wounded part of myself. And the shamer that kicks in, that's oh my God, I'm a piece of shit because I'm being judgmental, is simply one of the protectors protecting that wounded inner child. So now we can start to create a space for the protector too, that shamer, right? The inner critic who shames and criticizes the judgmental thought. And now we're creating all this space around it. And we're establishing healthier boundaries for ourselves, within ourselves. Right, so then maybe when you come across Susie talk shit pants at work, where do I come up with this? When you come across her shit talking, you don't react to it. You don't even feed into her energy. You just direct the conversation elsewhere. And through these actions, which started at home, which started internally, through your own internal boundaries and respecting those, you externalize that and your actions reflect it with other people. So now you don't always have to communicate and overly communicate to people hey, these are my boundaries. I need you to respect them. Your actions will be a fucking reflection of the boundaries that you have established. And sure, you've communicated them to those people, absolutely. But if your actions do not reflect that, if your actions don't reflect the boundaries that you've established, that energetic force field, people may not respect them. You won't know how to navigate when people don't respect them, right? And that's just where my example comes in of maybe Susie is talking shit at work and you don't want to be around that negativity. So instead of always overly communicating that to her, you learn to redirect the conversation because you're not consumed or reacting to those her judgmental words. In other words, would also be your own judgmental thoughts. If you react to your own judgmental thoughts, you're going to react to other people's judgmental behaviors. I'm gonna say it one more time. If you react to your own judgmental thoughts, then you will react to other people's judgmental behaviors. But once you've established those boundaries and you respect your own internal boundaries, meaning you don't judge the shamer, you don't judge the inner critic, you don't judge the wounded part of you. You've created space for all of these parts of you to coexist together. So the judgmental thought goes by when you're at the gym or the judgmental thought goes by when you're at work. You just let it float by. Like it's a cloud in the sky. And now that will be reflected, that internal state shift will be reflected in the way you interact with other people. So to come back to my example with Susie at work, when she starts shit talking, you can just direct the conversation elsewhere because you're not reacting. She's not triggering you anymore. I mean, sure, you may feel I personally still feel all the time when those triggers get stewed up, but I don't react to them. And that's what happens when we establish firm boundaries. Sure, in the outside world, that's totally important. And also establish internal boundaries for and with ourselves. Maybe it's self-compassion, practicing showing ourselves grace when we're being judgmental or we feel ashamed, we feel embarrassed. We practice those internal boundaries and they become reflected in our actions throughout the day. And then those actions, at that point, you don't even have to always go out of your way to communicate or overly communicate. If you ever get sick of overly communicating yourself to other people, let your actions speak louder than those words. And the more you practice, you establish, practice, and respect your own internal boundaries, those boundaries will be reflected in the way you move throughout the world, allowing your actions to be the words for people to understand how to interact with you. So it starts in here. We have to respect the boundaries that we have with other people. We have to respect the internal boundaries that we have. Those external boundaries you set up for other people are also going to be the same internal boundaries you have within yourself. If you do not want to deal with toxic behavior from other people, then you cannot tolerate toxic behavior within yourself. And again, I do not mean shame yourself out of having toxic behaviors. If you have toxic behaviors, and again, not a judgmental statement at all, because I notice them in myself all the time. If you have toxic behaviors, then there are unmet emotional needs and there's an unmet inner child inside of you that is being protected by that toxic behavior. And all we have to do is hold space for those two parts of ourselves, whether it's a protector or an exile, to use IFS terms for a moment, because I really like them. Hold space for them. Stand firm in your boundaries with yourself and then with the world. Yes, it is important to communicate and articulate these to people, but people can only meet you as deeply as they can meet themselves. So if you communicate that to somebody who hasn't met themselves in a deep manner, your actions are going to have to be the way of communication. Your actions will have to be the way of communication. Because if people can't go to that deep depth that you've gone to with yourself, if they can't go there with themselves, they can't go there with you. And if they can't go there with you, your words of communication, articulation, while good practice for when you come around people that are ready to go there with you, they're just gonna fall on deaf ears. Your actions have to be the reflection of those boundaries that you've established. I hope this video has helped you stand firm and deeply rooted in your own boundaries, not just with the world, but more importantly within yourself. If you took anything from this video, if you took anything from this video, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and a comment. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.